Welcome to College Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: U.S. seeks to thwart Russia's ambition to become a major LNG exporter. Harrison's 98 KOR, Ali's 3 rushing TDs help Marshall beat Georgia Southern 38-33, snap 5-game skid. The corner lot where all the world's Vegemite comes from. Protesters will demonstrate against world leaders. Israel-Hamas war as AIPAC comes to San Francisco. Jacquez runs for 2 TDs, Deco Wilson adds pick 6. Florida A&M beats Oakland, CA, 28-0. U.S. seeks to thwart Russia's ambition to become a major LNG exporter. Financial Times. The U.S. has imposed sanctions on Russia's Arctic LNG 2, blocking European and Asian countries from buying the project's gas when it starts producing next year, according to officials. This marks the first time the U.S. has directly targeted Russia's ability to export liquefied natural gas, LNG. Arctic LNG 2 is Russia's third large-scale LNG project, which would account for a fifth of Russia's target of producing 100 m tons of LNG annually by 2030. Energy Aspects has removed the expected Arctic LNG 2 output from its modeling of supply and demand for next year, saying the sanctions would tighten the market. Harrison's 98 KOR, Ali's 3 rushing TDs help Marshall beat Georgia Southern 38-33, snap 5-game skid. Associated Press. Marshall defeated Georgia Southern 38-33 in a game that snapped Marshall's 5-game losing streak. Jaden Harrison returned the opening kickoff for a 98-yard touchdown, while Rasheen Ali rushed for 163 yards and 3 touchdowns in the second half. Davis Brin threw 3 touchdown passes for Georgia Southern, but it wasn't enough to secure the win. The corner lot where all the world's Vegemite comes from. New York Times. Vegemite, the popular Australian yeast spread, has been recognized by the City of Melbourne as intangible cultural heritage and celebrated its centenary this year. The distinctive product, described as an acquired taste, is found in over 90% of Australian homes. The recipe, which has remained a closely guarded secret since the spread was invented in 1923, is made using leftover yeast from local bakeries and breweries. Vegemite was introduced as a competitor to British Marmite, initially struggling to find a market until it was promoted as a health food for babies in the 1930s. Its popularity soared during World War II when it was supplied to Australian troops. Vegemite is now manufactured and sold by Bega, a dairy company that purchased the brand from Kraft in 2017. Although it is almost unheard of outside of Australia, Vegemite has received endorsements from numerous celebrities including Hugh Jackman and Margot Robbie. Protesters will demonstrate against world leaders. Israel-Hamas war as AIPAC comes to San Francisco. The Toronto Star. Protesters are planning to march in downtown San Francisco to show their opposition to the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, APEC, Leaders Conference, which will be attended by leaders from nearly 24 countries including U.S. President Joe Biden. The No to APEC coalition, made up of more than 100 grassroots groups, argues that trade deals struck at summits such as APEC exploit workers and their families. Protests are expected throughout the week, although it is unlikely that world leaders will see them given the strict security zones in place. Jacquez runs for 2 TDs, Deco Wilson adds pick 6, Florida A&M beats Oakland, CA, 28-0. Associated Press. Florida A&M extended its win streak to 8 games with a 28-0 victory over Lincoln. Jacquez ran for 2 touchdowns, while Deco Wilson returned an interception for a touchdown. Florida A&M has now won 19 consecutive home games, the second longest active streak in the FCS. Lincoln finished its season with a 0-12 record. Vadiato throws 4 TDs to lead Middle Tennessee to 40-6 shellacking of Florida International. Associated Press. Middle Tennessee dominated Florida International in a 40-6 victory on Saturday night. Middle Tennessee quarterback Nicholas Vadiato threw for 275 yards and 4 touchdowns, including a 72-yard touchdown pass to DJ England Chisholm. The Blue Raiders also scored defensively with a 23-yard fumble return for a touchdown by Richard Kinley. Florida International quarterback Keyone Jenkins completed 22 of 35 passes for 226 yards. Social media reacts to Oklahoma Sooners' big win over West Virginia. Yahoo! The Oklahoma Sooners dominated West Virginia 73-20 on Saturday, as Dylan Gabriel passed Colt Brennan for 10th all-time in career passing yards and set a new Oklahoma record for touchdowns in a game with 8. Drake Stoops followed up his career day in Bedlam with another career day in Oklahoma's win. The Sooners' defense put the Mountaineers in second and third and long situations enough to be able to force Garrett Green to beat them with his arm. The Sooners still have Big 12 title aspirations, even if they do need a lot of help to get there. Carpenter's punt return score sparks UTSA to 34-14 victory over Rice. Associated Press. UTSA defeated Rice 34-14 on Saturday night in a game marked by a 21-point third quarter and a 50-yard punt return for a touchdown by Chris Carpenter. The Roadrunners took a 10-0 lead in the first half, but Rice quickly closed the gap with a touchdown. UTSA then pulled away in the third quarter with a touchdown run by Robert Henry and Carpenter's punt return. Freshman Tate Sandel kicked his first career field goal in the fourth quarter to complete the scoring for UTSA. Quarterback Frank Harris completed 15 of 24 passes for 175 yards for the Roadrunners, while A.J. Padgett totaled 182 yards on 17 of 28 passing for the Owls. Justin Marshall runs for 119 yards and a TD, and Colorado State holds off San Diego State 22-19. Associated Press. Colorado State defeated San Diego State with a final score of 22-19. Justin Marshall led the Rams with 119 rushing yards and a touchdown. Colorado State held a 22-3 lead before San Diego State scored the last 16 points of the game. The Rams were able to run out the clock and secure the victory. Quarterback Braden Fowler-Nicolosi threw for 202 yards for Colorado State. San Diego State's Jalen Maiden threw for 128 yards and added 16 rushing yards. Bradley coach Kate Popovec-Goss suspended by the school for the Braves' non-conference schedule. Associated Press. Bradley University has suspended women's basketball coach Kate Popovec-Goss for the rest of the team's non-conference schedule. The school stated that the decision was made in line with its commitment to upholding its staff's values and standards. Assistant coach Armelia Horton will lead the team during Popovec-Goss' suspension. The Braves lost their season opener and had a record of 4-28 last season. Recap and highlights. California withstands late comeback, sends Washington State to sixth straight loss. Yahoo! Washington State fell to Cal, 42-39, on Saturday, dropping its sixth straight game and falling to 4-5 on the season. WSU got the ball back down 3 late in the fourth quarter, but when their drive stalled in Golden Bears territory, kicker Dean Janikowski had a chance to tie the game with a 48-yard field goal. He pulled it left. The Cougs made a promising rally, but it paid for its 3 turnovers. Cal turned those into 19 points. Meanwhile, the Cougs couldn't do the same with its opportunities. In the second half, WSU's defense forced a fumble, thanks to edge Brennan Jackson, but Washington State got only a field goal. A series later, the Cougs' defense forced a punt, and their offense took 2 straight sacks and needed to punt. McIlvain rallies Central Arkansas to 27-24 victory over Eastern Kentucky. Associated Press. Central Arkansas pulled off a thrilling 27-24 victory over Eastern Kentucky on Saturday night. Central Arkansas quarterback Will McIlvain threw a 46-yard touchdown pass to Jared Barnes with 1 second remaining to secure the win. The game-winning touchdown came after Eastern Kentucky had taken a 24-21 lead with just 24 seconds left on the clock. Central Arkansas had taken an early lead with a touchdown on the first play from scrimmage, but Eastern Kentucky quickly responded to tie the game. McIlvain finished the game with 291 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception, while Eastern Kentucky quarterback Parker McKinney threw for 377 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Murphy, Benefield lead Kennesaw State's 63-3 rout of Virginia Lynchburg. Associated Press. Kennesaw State dominated Virginia Lynchburg in a 63-3 victory. Jonathan Murphy threw 2 touchdown passes and Michael Benefield ran for 106 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Owls' defense limited Virginia Lynchburg to just 105 yards of total offense. Kennesaw State scored their first touchdown on a pick six and never looked back, taking a 21-0 lead after the first quarter. Murphy completed 8 of 10 passes, 2 for touchdowns, and also scored a rushing touchdown. The lab where everything is set alight to help save us from bushfires. The Sydney Morning Herald. Researchers at Melbourne University's Flare Wildfire Research Laboratory in Creswick, Australia, have been examining how power poles made of timber and composite materials withstand intense fires, in a bid to find ways to make them more resilient. The research is particularly relevant given that large, dangerous blazes are increasing in frequency and intensity as a result of climate change. The work at Flare is also helping scientists and emergency services to anticipate extreme fires and respond accordingly. Mark Fisher's game-winning bicycle kick lifts number 22 Stanford past Cal. Yahoo! Stanford men's soccer team defeated California in a 2-1 win, with Mark Fisher scoring the game-winning bicycle goal in the 89th minute. The victory concluded the regular season for the Cardinal. And that's a wrap on today's news. Let's take a moment to recap what we've learned. First, the US is flexing its muscles and imposing sanctions on Russia's Arctic LNG 2 project, which would have made Russia a major LNG exporter. Looks like the US doesn't want any competition in the LNG market. In the world of sports, we saw some impressive performances. Marshall football snapped their 5-game losing streak with a thrilling victory over Georgia Southern. And in college basketball, Bradley University suspended their women's basketball coach, Kate Popovec-Goss, for the rest of their non-conference schedule. Tough break for the Braves. On a lighter note, Vegemite, the iconic Australian spread, celebrated its centenary this year. It's been recognized as intangible cultural heritage by the city of Melbourne. I guess you could say it's the toast of the town. Protesters are planning to march in San Francisco against the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation (APEC) Leaders Conference. They believe these trade deals exploit workers and their families. Looks like they're not too happy with the leaders in attendance. And finally, researchers in Australia are setting things on fire to study how power poles can withstand intense bushfires. It's all part of their efforts to combat the increasing frequency and intensity of wildfires caused by climate change. Talk about playing with fire. Well, folks, those were the highlights of the day. Remember, if you have any thoughts or questions, feel free to join the discussion. What are your thoughts on the US imposing sanctions on Russia's LNG project? Do you have any unique ways to celebrate the centenary of Vegemite? Let's hear it. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.